Hey everybody, it's Mike, and welcome to Chip Damage, and we have made it through another year. Yes, I'm recording this in the closing days of 2022. A very weird year for gaming, isn't it? Yes, this was technically the second full year of the new generation of console hardware, the Xbox Series X/S and the PlayStation 5, but it really kind of felt like their first year. The Switch entered its fifth year, which is kind of nuts, but went hard this year and stayed strong. And yeah, it's just been a wild ride for 2022, and it's finally over. And before we enter 2023, I wanted to make this video where I talk about the games I played this year, both new and old, games released in 2022 and not, because as a collector, as someone who loves to play their ever-growing eternal backlog, I love to kind of mix it up. Whenever a new game isn't coming out or I'm not in the mood for one, I go back and into the collection and play something I've always wanted to play. And that's where this video is going to cover today. My journey through 2022, my thoughts on the games that I played, and at the very end, I guess I'll say the obligatory Game of the Year statement. What was my favorite game that I played this year? So yes, please join me. And at the end of this video, please comment. You guys have heard me say this many times. My favorite thing about this channel is the discussion. Check in the comments later on to see, oh, Mike, you played this. What'd you think of this? I played this. I loved that. You got to check this out. I enjoyed this. I love hearing it, whether you agree or disagree. That is always my favorite thing to kind of read. And sometimes it gives me a new perspective or gives me a new game to check out. So of course, let me know your thoughts on this video and what you thought of this very bizarre year, 2022. So yeah, let's jump in. And of course, I have to say it, if you like what you're about to see, please like and subscribe. So let's jump in without any further ado. So yeah, 2022, how did I ring in this new year? Well, I made a video a little earlier in the year where I discussed what I did for the first half of this year, or at least a large portion of it, and that is I finally dove into the Soul series. Yes, I decided that after only ever really playing Bloodborne, that I would go through the entire Souls franchise in the lead up to Elden Ring. And I started right around a year ago now playing this gem right here, Demon Souls. And if you want my full take on all the Souls games from Demon Souls, Dark Souls 1, 2, 3, and Sekiro, and Bloodborne, please check out that prior video. But yeah, I can't talk about 2022 without talking about the Souls games. And just briefly, yeah, I loved each and every one of them. I did Demon Souls, and I did them all in order. I did Demon Souls right after that. I did Dark Souls Remastered. I then did Dark Souls 2, Scholar of the First Sin. Then I did the complete version of Dark Souls 3. And then I finished with this gem right here, Sekiro. Now, I did these games consecutively over a course of about 8 months, and I took some breaks in the middle to play some smaller releases. But pretty much from January to August, it was like Souls year for me. And yeah, I gotta say, what a hell of a time. It really kind of, I knew the Souls games secondhand through my best friend, and of course I had Platinum Bloodborne years prior and loved them to death, but now I have the full scope of it in my brain, why this series is so beloved. And like I said, check out that other video if you want more in-depth breakdown of each game. But yeah, it became into my top 10 franchises of all time. It's still kind of nebulous, but it's definitely one of my favorite game series after playing it back to back. And you know, it definitely colored the year. And of course, this was all due to the lead up to the release of this game right here, Elden Ring. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to finish the series of Souls games before this release in February. I was nuts to think I could do the whole franchise between like late December to late February for the release of this. So I decided to play all of these games before Elden Ring came out. So I played this release a little late. And of course, if you're in the gaming sphere, you've heard everything about Elden Ring, winning Game of the Year at the Game Awards, Game of the Year at the Game Awards, and winning multiple awards in other venues all year. It was one of the highest selling games, breaking records. It was the highest selling game of the year. There's like very little to say negatively about this game. And yeah, you know, I hate to be the guy agreeing with the mainstream, but I love this game. I did not 100% or platinum it yet. There's still much for me to do in this game, but I sink a good chunk of time into it. And yeah, it kind of somehow captures the essence of Souls games, but expands upon it greatly. Even though this game brought in tons of new fans, it is not the casual, friendly entry point to this series. It is in fact still incredibly difficult. Do I think it's the best of the Soul series? Probably not yet, at least from my experience, but it's definitely of the quality of its older brethren. These Souls games are not open world games. Like there's a lot of open space and you can explore, but this game truly is vast, but somehow it did not lose the depth and meticulous detail of the Souls series. And that is an incredible accomplishment. This game is just as cryptic and difficult and challenging as its forebearers. But somehow they increased it to one of the coolest open worlds I've ever played in a game. I must say, From Software is one of the few companies that did not sell out. Yes, they brought in George R.R. Martin, who's a very famous contemporary author at the moment, but like this is still very much their game. And I really appreciate what this is. This game came out complete. It's like a 200-hour game if you want to do everything. And I know there were some bugs in the very beginning on certain platforms, but it ran well for me at least, and it was a complete game at launch. And there still is no paid DLC. So I want you to think of that a mostly single-player focused. You can play this with a buddy or with other people, but it's still mostly a single-player game that is super long, super difficult, with no DLC or microtransactions, came out working and complete in the year 2022. That is a great thing for any big game to come out. It has not, From Software has not gone down the Activision, EA, Ubisoft road. So yeah, Elden Ring, loved it. Played this for a bit. Played it a little bit when it first launched in February, and then played it again when I finally beat Sekiro in August. Love it. Got to complete it. We'll have more on this in 2023, let me tell you, because I still have to go back and fully beat this. But Elden Ring was fantastic. But February was a very, very busy month. Breaking up the Souls gameplay, I had to get my fighting game on. You guys know me. I'm an FGC guy. I had to pick up the new King of Fighters 15. And yes, this coming out right around Valentine's Day, if I'm not mistaken, was something that was announced about 2 years, almost 2 years before its launch. And I was very happy with this game. King of Fighters 14, releasing in 2016, was okay. It was kind of hailed as the fun but ugly King of Fighters game, and that's really what it was. 14, like it was an ugly game, or it was like stylistically vacant. I won't say it was like bland looking, I wouldn't say it was ugly, but it had a huge roster, ending up being like 58 characters, and it played good enough. But it didn't really capture people. It kind of got the ball rolling for SNK again. They would go on to release Samurai Showdown in 2019 and SNK Heroines, and it started kind of the revival, and it all kind of culminated in this King of Fighters 15, which is fantastic. I loved it. Wonderful game. Slightly small roster at launch, but a better roster. They trimmed some of the fat, as in the lamer characters like Team Brazil and Xanadu from King of Fighters 14, and focused on bringing back more classic characters and some new cool ones like Isla, as seen on the cover here, and Dolores. And yeah, I played a hell of a lot of this during February, March, and early April. And the DLC has been steady. It launched with 38 characters, if I'm not mistaken. It came with 1 month or two later, a free DLC character, Omega Rugal. And there's been 12 DLC characters released since then. So yeah, this game has been kind of kicking ass with a steady release of quality DLC. It was good right off the bat. I've heard there's online issues, but playing the online with this game, I never really had too many bad matches, but really just like the amount of stuff to do and unlock in the beginning was solid. Tons of music to unlock, endings for every character, every team. My boy Terry Bogard came with his Garo Mark of the Wolves costume. So this game feels good. It feels solid. And they're still rolling out new characters this year with the announcements of Kim Kapwan and Shingo Yabuki a little bit later down the road, with more teams coming out. So King of Fighters is doing pretty good for itself, I must say. I don't really have much complaint. It's still not the best looking fighting game, better looking, more style than the King of Fighters 14. And I believe crossplay for all consoles and PC is coming, which is awesome to have Xbox, Xbox, PlayStation, and PC all play against each other. That's fantastic. Bring the community together. SNK needs that. SNK, love you. Love this game. And all you got to do to really make the next game the best is to take Shunhei and the Sleepy Boy out of it, the new main characters of the story as it were in King of Fighters. If you just remove them in a patch, everyone would be happier. So yeah, King of Fighters 15, probably the best new fighting game I played in 2022. So moving on to that, I had to take a little bit of a break after Demon Souls, Dark Souls, and Dark Souls 2. So, I was playing a little bit of King of Fighters on the side. But, this was a year for another one of my favorite franchises. This was a great year for Sonic, with the release of Sonic Frontiers very recently, and Sonic Origins in the middle of the year, and the Sonic movie. I was in a Sonic mood. So, I'm like, let's play some games. I decided to go back and play Sonic CD on the PS3 and Xbox 360, which is a game I played a lot growing up, but never like fully completed that game, never got all the time stones and got all the perfect endings and all that. So I decided to go and do that. That took me about a week. Loved it, fantastic. But I'm like, you know what? Now that I've 100%ed obviously the classic 4 Sonic games, 1, 2, 3, and Knuckles and CD, like there's one Sonic game I've never 100% completed and played right, and that is something I had to break out some old ass hardware for, and that is Knuckles Chaotix. Yes, I've had this game for many years and I've played through it once or twice. And I'm like, you know what though? There are these things called the Chaos Rings in there. They're basically the Chaos Emeralds. I'm like, let me go through and get them all and 100% this game. And I did. It took a couple days. I had to break out the old Genesis and 32X. And I'm like, you know what? I really grew to appreciate this game. This game is often seen as like a black sheep. People want it re-released, but they say it's not re-released because people didn't really like it. But like, actually going back and playing it, it's pretty good. The sprite work is fantastic, taking advantage of the 32X, and the music is out of this world. The music in this lives up to the standard of the classic Sonic games. I have them downloaded and I listen to them all the time now. I really jam out like Door into Summer and Midnight Bliss and Garden Greenhouse. Like there are so many great songs in this. And actually completing it, getting all those bonus stage 3D rings, 3D Chaos Rings, it was quite difficult. The game itself is very easy. It's definitely the easiest of the classic Sonic games, but to complete it and get the true ending, it's quite difficult. I ended up really liking and appreciating this game, and I'm very sad that this game did not come out to the Sonic Origins collection. There's never really been re-released ever. Like there was a temporary PC port I've heard a couple of years ago, but that's been delisted. So yeah, if you're like, you know, wondering and have any way to actually play this game, and you've always heard it's not that good, like yeah, it's really easy, and the tethering effects with the ring that tethers your two characters together can be a little annoying, and like the randomness of how you select characters and stages, it can be a little annoying. It can be gamed. You can kind of like trick the system into playing who you want to play as, where you want to play as. You just got to look into how to do that. It plays just like a classic Sonic game. The physics are fun. Everything about this, it's probably the weakest of the classic Sonic games, but it's still a really good 2D platformer that I think needs a little bit more love. And I was probably the only one giving it love in this year, 2022, and that is Knuckles Chaotix. When I was in a Sonic phase this year, what can I say? I can't really, I'm always in a Sonic mood, but in particular this year, I'm happy 100% at this. And speaking of classic Sega games, there was just a game that got re-released 2 years ago on the Switch and then came a year later to the PlayStation and Xbox, and that is this game right here, the remake of Panzer Dragoon, the Sega Saturn classic on modern hardware. So yeah, this game originally, what you see here is the Switch release that was released physically in a limited capacity by the website Limited Run. I decided to pick this up. And then they decided to re-release it on PlayStation. Now, I've heard the initial launch of the Switch version was not fantastic. It ran at a weird rate. Some of the features were odd. The controls were a little odd. I heard it was solid, but not as good as fans wanted. They decided to fully upgrade it, do a huge patch for it, and I waited a little bit longer to play it till I was in the mood, and then it finally came out on the PS4, so I'm like, hey, let me finally play this. So I like the original Panzer Dragoon a lot on the Saturn. It's a simple but difficult and challenging game, early 3D game, and the fact that it's getting relaunched at all was fantastic. So playing through it, I enjoyed the new look of it. It's a cheaper game, but like I think they did their best to kind of capture the style of Panzer Dragoon, and I decided, like, you know what, I'm really enjoying this. Let me platinum this. So yes, I ended up platinuming the original Panzer Dragoon release on PlayStation, and it's fun. Like if you're an old classic game head that's been on the fence about what you've seen about this game, like know that it has been fixed and upgraded. And as someone who played the original, owns it, and loves it, I enjoyed it very much. I had a very annoying trophy in this game where you had to play the game for 100 hours. That was the last trophy I needed to get for this. This is like at best a 2 to 3 hour game. It can easily be beaten in one sitting. So I just had to like leave the game on the menu for 100 hours to get that trophy. That was insane, but I needed to have it. I couldn't have all but one trophy in this game. But yeah, something to kind of break up the Souls gameplay for the first half of the year. Another game was the Panzer Dragoon remake. Particularly, I played the PlayStation version. I loved it. For old game heads and people wondering about an old Sega Saturn classic, how it was, check it out. Worth checking out. I believe it's $20 US on all the storefronts out there. And yeah, I don't have a physical edition with me at the moment. It's coming also from Limited Run, but right around the time, early in the summertime, I picked up, of course, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge beat 'em up game that was released, and it was wonderful. If you guys don't know, Turtles had a big year this year. There was the Cowabunga collection, which re-released the NES, Super Nintendo, and Sega Genesis and arcade ports to modern platforms, but there was also a brand new release made in that style, which was fantastic. I believe it was by the same team that did the Streets of Rage collection, the Streets of Rage 4, I should say. And it was great. Had a few buddies come over, play as Raph, Mikey, Donnie, and Leo. And I've heard that game just got a massive update as well. I need to go back and complete that. But Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was a fantastic distraction and fun co-op game for me to play. I love when old franchises come back, especially from Konami. Like they've actually been doing some work in the last couple of months, and I've heard that they're going to be doing some more work in 2023 with the Silent Hill releases. But Turtles was nice to go back and play as a quick distraction. As a note, I got the PlayStation version of Shredder's Revenge. That was a mistake. There is the Switch and Xbox version allows 6-player instead of just 4-player, which is what you're restricted to on PlayStation. So if you're going to pick it up and you have the options, don't get the PlayStation version if you want to have 6-friend chaos in Shredder's Revenge. And so I was bouncing around a lot early in the middle of the year, but there was one game that I definitely wanted to fully complete as the year went on. And I kind of have to be in the mood to get into JRPGs. And as you guys know, I'm a huge Final Fantasy VII fan, having platinumed the remake and then getting the upgrade on PS5. I love the original. I play everything Final Fantasy VII that I get my hands on. But one thing that I was a little slow to jump on was this game right here, and that is the expansion pack for Final Fantasy VII Remake. That is Final Fantasy VII Intermission. These names always get like instant. There's like Intergrade, Intermission, whatever. There is the Yuffie expansion pack Intermission for Final Fantasy VII Remake. And I got a steelbook that was released with this game. Like you can get the whole package for PS5, and if you pre-ordered it, you got this nice steelbook here. But I waited on this. I put 100 hours into Final Fantasy VII Remake, and then I didn't play it for a year. So I kind of forgot I was worried that I'd forget how to play it. Plus, I'm not the biggest Yuffie fan, so it wasn't the most intriguing thing. But I needed to do it, right? I needed to get the full context of the story. So I'm like, let me jump into this. So playing through it, it was really good. It's a PlayStation 5 exclusive DLC for Remake, and it looks great. And even though you only plays Yuffie, it actually fleshes her character out a lot. It kind of shows what Yuffie was doing during the time that Cloud and his group was adventuring through Midgar in part 1, and it's kind of parallel to that. You play as Yuffie and her partner Sonan, in their investigation and adventures in Midgar, being sent in from Wutai, and it's a pretty condensed story. I think under 10 hours, under 8 hours even to beat the story. And it was good. It was actually really fun. And they enhanced some mechanics in the combat arena from Final Fantasy VII. There's new mechanics that I really hope are brought into Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2. And even though it's only a 2-party system, it was really cool. And I hope this data carries over. I ended up maxing Yuffie out and doing all the mini games. Oh my God. Fort Condor, returning from Final Fantasy VII, was fantastic. I'm so sad that it wasn't in Remake Part 1, but they brought it back here. If you guys are Fort Condor fans, basically a very simple but very addicting RTS mini side game for Final Fantasy VII. It's fully here, and it's quite challenging at times. And I decided to go through this game on hard mode, and I loved it. And the fantastic thing about this expansion pack was that once you beat it, more content is unlocked in the base game, Final Fantasy VII Remake. What that is basically a new super boss. Weiss, the Immaculate from Dirge of Cerberus, is unlocked as an optional boss battle in the base game. And I went back, and that's one of the hardest bosses I've ever fought, guys. I'll tell you straight up. After going through all the Souls games, Weiss the Immaculate, the secret boss in Final Fantasy VII Remake, is harder than any Souls game boss for me. I mean, of course this is subjective, but he took me at least 6 hours of cumulative game time to beat. You needed to have a perfect build with maxed out characters in the base game to beat him. And I remember there was just a few days where I'm like, I can't beat this guy. I had to research the perfect strategy. And even with that, you needed to have both the reflexes and timing and strategy all down to beat this incredibly hard boss in Final Fantasy VII, which is something I love that I don't think enough games have these days. That old RPGs, especially JRPGs had, was incredibly difficult optional bosses. So that is what Final Fantasy VII Intermission added. A great little DLC package that has more meat on the bone than you might expect if you're willing to dive into it, that'll expand the story and kind of enhance it, as well as some fantastic updates for the base game. So yeah, if you, by the way, just as a side note, if you guys have played FF7 Remake on the PlayStation 4 and you haven't played the PS5 version, you haven't upgraded, and you have the option to, just check it out. Your save file will transfer over. It's an incredible upgrade. It not only looks like noticeably sharper, but the load times, there are none. Like, it's incredible to me like that game loads as quickly as it does. It probably would shave off 3 hours of total playtime if I was to replay the game and time myself. Fantastic. The Final Fantasy VII Remake, the Yuffie Intermission, great title. Well, what else? You know, around this time in June, like I mentioned earlier, Sonic Origins came out. Now, it was kind of a maligned collection because of the price and the rollout model and the optional content, but I'm a Sonic stan, so I had to pick it up. I picked up Sonic Origins. The normally $40 is the retail price, but there was a $5 kind of pre-order bonus expansion for the premium, which gave you some extra nicks and knacks in the game. And I must say, it's a nice collection. It's been fully patched now. There were some odd bugs apparently reported in the launch version. I never encountered them, luckily. I ended up platinuming them in the game just to see the differences. I had played through Sonic 1, 2, 3, like Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and Sonic CD. Yet again, I played through Sonic CD twice this year to get everything. And yeah, it's a great collection for those who have not ever played through those classic Sonic games, as well as those who just want to re-experience them like myself. Now, the biggest point of contention in that collection, and I'll slow down for this, strangely for Sonic, is that Sonic 3's music has been changed. It is all but confirmed that Michael Jackson has worked with Sega in the past in order to make some of the songs for Sonic 3. Now, there's rights issues. Sega's been very cagey about speaking about this, whether or not Michael Jackson has worked on Sonic 3, but he basically did, or at least someone associated with him did, so they can't re-release Sonic 3 easily. If you look back at prior re-releases, packages like the Genesis Collection or on the Switch or on the 3DS, they always stop at Sonic 2, most likely due to these music reasons. So what they did in this collection was they thankfully re-released the game all as one package. I'm a little upset you can't play Sonic 3 and Knuckles separately. It's like the whole game connected, but regardless, it's nice. They added some nice tweaks, so you're not really missing out on much. But some of the stages just have different music entirely. Like off the top of my head, Ice Cap and Launch Base Zone have entirely different tracks in Carnival Night. Okay, they kind of suck, especially in comparison to the original, but as a whole package, with all of Sonic 1, 2, 3 and CD and Knuckles, like, it didn't bother me that much. I'm like, okay, these are just a few stages. Some of them still have the classic music. So yeah, what can I say? It's going to be a bit of a bummer, but it's really fun to play Sonic 3 again on modern consoles. I think the collection had a fantastic set, a vault, if you will, a collection of classic Sonic movies and concept art and promotional art. That's always really cool. Those are essentially the unlockables of the game, classic documentation of Sonic. There was brand new animated cutscenes for the beginning and end of each game in the Origin set, which were really beautifully done. They, I think Tyson Hess is the artist who also worked on Sonic Origins, did that. It was a solid set for what it is for $40. I do think it's a little highly priced, but I think it's still you have enough value there to make it a worthy purchase to get 1, 2, 3 and Knuckles and CD with the collection, plus a new mission mode, which is simple. Basically, it's little tailored Sonic missions where you got to, like, you know, defeat 30 enemies in 30 seconds or get through the maze, and it's all using assets from Sonic 1, 2, 3 Knuckles and CD. So yeah, Sonic Origins took up a good chunk of my June. I really enjoyed it. As a Sonic fan, I suggest it to other Sonic fans and people who are just curious. I think, especially after the patches, it is all worth it. I really wish they did a physical release of Sonic Origins. I wish they did a physical release like the next collection I'm going to talk about right around the middle of the year. Another game I put some time into was the Capcom fighting game collection. Oh, this is fantastic. So what is this? This was a budget, I believe this was only 30 or 40 US dollars, that has a ton of classic Capcom games, that some of which are very hard to come by otherwise. There was a collection of 5 Darkstalkers games, Darkstalkers 1 and 2, and like 3 versions of 3. Like, there's a lot of Darkstalkers. Like, the titles are insane and it's hard to keep track of. But I'm a Darkstalkers fan, and it's cool to have them all here, and they all have online play. But then there were some other titles. There was Super Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting, which is kind of a hodgepodge of all the different versions of Street Fighter 2, where you can play as, like, classic Street Fighter 2 Ryu, but you can also play as like Super Street Fighter 2 version of Ryu, and you can kind of mix and match. It's a kind of a definitive collective version of Street Fighter 2, so cool to have. And then you had Super Gem Fighter, which is probably something I put more time in than I'd care to admit, which is basically a classic 2D chibi style fighting game where characters knock gems out of each other to play to get stronger, and it's just a fun kind of pastiche of Capcom characters fighting each other in this cutesy art style. You had Cyberbots, which is a PlayStation fighting game that Capcom made, where Jin from Marvel vs. Capcom fame, the guy who summons the giant robot Blodia, that's his game, is finally released here. Only the second time in the US and the first time physically. It never came to the US except for a downloadable version on the PlayStation 3 store, and I believe somewhat recently on the PS4 Capcom Arcade Collection, but this is the first time you can get it physically in America. That's Cyberbots, fun 2D fighter. And then you have Super Puzzle Fighter 2, the game I put the most time into on this collection. Super Puzzle Fighter 2 is a fantastic game that was released on PlayStation, Sega Saturn, and Game Boy Advance, and re-released on 360 in a slightly different version that is basically a Tetris-style puzzle game where you have two characters fighting in the center, and the better that you're doing in the puzzle game, it kind of reflect, the two characters will reflect what is happening, and it is a very cool puzzle game that I'm usually not into. Competitive puzzle game, but you can play it online. It's really fun and addicting. And then finally, you had the release of Red Earth, or Warzard, on this. The first time it being officially released in the United States. A Capcom CPS3 game, in other words, the engine that was used for JoJo's Bizarre Adventure and Street Fighter 3. A kind of Conan the Barbarian-esque game where you play as like monsters, in a pseudo single-player fighting game where you're fighting like dinosaurs and wizards and demons. Basically a very rare and obscure Capcom game, rounding out this 10-game collection that I put quite a bit of time into in the middle of the year. That is the Capcom Fighting Game Collection. If you're a fighting game fan, a Darkstalkers fan, or just a fan of like weird, eclectic, old school games, Capcom Fighting Collection. Fantastic purchase in the middle of the year. Capcom, keep doing stuff like this. I just want to point out that I remember this very vividly. Right around this time in August, I ended up finishing my Souls playthrough, and that's when I made that prior video that I talked about. And the last one I did was Sekiro, which ended up platinuming. Probably one of my proudest platinum games that I got for a game is Sekiro, and that was done. And then I was free to kind of go back and play what else I wanted to play without the guilt of not finishing it. I loved every minute of it, and luckily there weren't too many games early in the year that I was super interested in, but I was finally done with the Soul series. And what was I going to play immediately following that? And that is this game right here. This came out in September, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure All-Star Battle R. I'm assuming the R stands for remake. So what is this? This is a pseudo remaster remake of a PlayStation 3 game, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure All-Star Battle, which was somewhat of a late and limited release on the PlayStation 3. And I'm a huge JoJo fan, if you guys haven't noticed from the poster that's been behind me for the last year and a half, as well as the other JoJo videos I did. And I love fighting games. And this game, the original, I loved, but, it's not the deepest fighting game. It was more for JoJo fans. It's made by Bandai Namco, so it has some good mechanics, but I was excited to give it another go. They were giving the game a new coat of paint, adding some characters, changing some models and voices to kind of match the JoJo anime that has come out in the last 10 years. And I'm like, all right, I'll play this for a bit. Man, it was a substantial upgrade. The game just felt better to play. It looked better. It was actually it was so broken in some ways that it actually became somewhat of a competitive game in the vein of like Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Like infinite combos and juggles. The new characters they added were fantastic. And they're adding DLC. At the time of this recording, all the DLC isn't out yet, but they're adding more characters and stages. And I just ended up putting a ton of time into this. I ended up platinuming this game. The online was trash. I usually don't complain too much about fighting games online. I usually have a pretty good time. I guess maybe because of the area I live in, or maybe just pure dumb luck. But like getting online matches in this was rough. But there was enough single player stuff, and I'm a big enough JoJo fan that I really enjoyed the little nuances and challenges and unlockables in this game. And I say, if you're a fighting game fan, but especially if you're a JoJo game fan, you got to get this. This is probably the best JoJo game. and not that there's many, but the best representation of JoJo as a whole franchise that you can get. The Dreamcast one is great, but that's only part 3. All the parts here get great representation, especially if you're a newer JoJo fan. This is something that you should definitely check out, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure All-Star Battle R. Also, there was a special edition of this game that came with a Jolene Cujo figure. I have an unboxing of that. Check that out if you're interested. But yeah, right around this time also, got to talk about anime, of course. You guys know me. I watched on Netflix, kind of on a whim, Cyberpunk Edgerunners by Trigger Studio. Now, I love Trigger. Studios Kill la Kill, who priorly made Gurren Lagann and Panty and Stocking, and they go on to make some fantastic other movies like Promare. There's Little Witch Academia. I'm a big Trigger fan, but particularly I'm a fan of one director, Imaishi. I think it's Hideyuki Imaishi, who directed Kill la Kill and Gurren Lagann, so I always kind of keep my eye on anything that he is going to be doing. And he was doing this 10-episode series, Cyberpunk Edgerunners. Now, just as a quick note, I was not interested in Cyberpunk even before its kind of cataclysmic launch, like the terrible launch. Just not my type of thing, like create a character, Western RPG. Like it looked like it was going to be okay, but it just really, I wasn't super interested. However, after watching that phenomenal anime, my favorite anime of the year, 10 episodes only, watch it in one sitting, really hooked me, watched it twice, really hit me. They knocked out of the park, and I think many people agree. I decided, you know what, let me give this game a shot. So I decided for $16 to get a brand new copy of Cyberpunk, played on my PS5, and it's been heavily patched by the developers over the last 2 years to run and play pretty smooth. I had no glitch issues with what I played. However, I put about between 15 and 20 hours into this game, and it's solid. It's good. It is exactly what I expected it to be in terms of gameplay and story progression. The world is cool. It has a lot of scope, but not a ton of depth, if you know what I mean. So I put it down, but it's better than I thought it would be. So I put about a week's worth of play into Cyberpunk 2077, and I gotta say, it gets a passing grade of like a C for me. I know that this game has blown up, and anyone who says this game blew up in 2023 for any, or 2022 for any reason other than the quality of that anime, are out of their minds. Like, oh no, people were coming back due to the patches and this and that. It's like, no, specifically like the player count erupted after that anime because it was a quick, really good anime on Netflix. Yes, it did sell incredibly well when it launched, but it was lambasted and no one was really playing or talking about it. This became a trending thing after the anime. I will say the anime is better than this game. However, this game was okay, and I gotta say, if you're interested in it, the game is cheap as dirt now. My one friend platinumed the game after watching the anime. He really dug it. So, apples and oranges. Not exactly my thing, but I enjoyed what I played. I think it's a cool game, but just something I didn't have the energy or the kind of the drive to fully complete. But 20 hours for 16 bucks that I paid for this, well worth it. Cyberpunk, you know what? You get a passing grade. But if you don't want to do that, watch the anime. I have to say that. But that's all I really have to say on Cyberpunk. And we're coming into, like I said, the September, October area of the year. And that is when I jumped into this game right here, which I did a prior unboxing video on. And that is No More Heroes 3. Yes, so if you noticed in my last video for the wrap-up of 2021, I mentioned that unfortunately I had a personal tragedy around the Switch release of this game in August 2021, so I was kind of knocked out of playing it. I never got back around to it. I'm kind of glad I didn't play that version because they decided to release a higher def version on Xbox and PlayStation this year in late August, in September, I should say. And it came with fantastic collectibles, physical collectibles. You check out in that unboxing video, and soundtrack and all that. I ended up playing the hell out of this version. It looks a bit sharper and runs a bit better than that Switch version, and I loved it. I waited so many years for No More Heroes 3, and then I didn't play it when it launched, but hey, life happens. But when I finally decided to sit down and play this is fantastic. Just as wacky and punk rock as the prior No More Heroes games. Suda hasn't lost his touch. I don't know if this is the end of the franchise. This probably didn't sell as well as they expected it to. No one but me, I know, actually bought this HD version. Probably why they gave away so much stuff with this. But I think it was fantastic. It is not what it was advertised on the box. Plenty of surprises. You just thought you were going to be playing 10 against 10 ambiguous aliens. I'm like, I don't know about that. Let's see how it matches up to 1 and 2. It's just as good as those. Is it the best? I don't know, but it was a lot of fun to actually play through, go into the open world, do the weird side quests, tons of stuff to do in this game. Wacky, violent, punk rock, irreverent, self-referential. This stuff is rare. Is it the most technically proficient game? Absolutely not. Is it buggy? Somewhat. Is it ugly? No, it's not ugly, but it is like a cheaper, it's intentionally cheap looking. And I love that. Very Sex Pistols, very cool. My boy Travis having a good time. No More Heroes 3. Put plenty of hours into this. Came nowhere near 100%ing everything because of all the stuff you can do in this. It's tedious on purpose, so it's kind of funny. You have to be like, this is a very esoteric game. This is for a certain demographic of otakus in their 30s like me. But this is a solid action game for anyone who's going to play it. You do kind of, it's weird. Even if you play 1 and 2, you're not even going to fully understand everything, but I think you could fully appreciate it more if you play through 1 and 2. But if you just want to jump in on your PlayStation or Xbox or PC now, you can get it. No More Heroes 3, fantastic HD version. Had a lot of fun with this later in the year. So yeah, No More Heroes 3 took up a good chunk of my time. And I've been leaving it out a little bit, but this has all been on my PlayStation 4 and 5, what have you. But I gave the Switch a lot of love this year. Throughout all of this, and I mentioned this game, beginning this game late last year in my 2021 video, but I completed 100% of this game this year, and that is Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser Fury. This is fantastic. I'm going to reiterate what this is. This was a re-release of a Wii U game, the Wii U Mario game, which at the time I just wasn't into. I never played my Wii U that much, and this game really wasn't what I was looking for in Mario after Galaxy 1 and 2, which I love so much. But with this re-release, which came out now like 2 years ago, I finally really fell in love with this game. The gameplay of the main game was sped up a little bit to make it more really enjoyable. What is it? It's basically a multiplayer 3D Mario game where you can play alone or up to 4 players, right? So it's kind of a weird successor to 3 different lines of games. It was the next 3D Mario game after Galaxy 2. It was the sequel to Mario 3D Land on the 3DS, and it was also kind of the next 4-player game after the new Super Mario Brothers games. And like I said priorly, it was all of those things and none of those. It kind of carves out its own identity while kind of paying homage to those 3 lineages that kind of lead into this game. And with one friend, this game is fantastic. 4 people, it's chaos, you can't see anything. But there are a ton of levels. This is a very long game, especially if you want to get all the collectibles, the green stars and the stamps. And we ended up doing that. Me and one friend, every time he would come over throughout the year, we're like, let's do a bunch of stages. And we miss a star. We're like, no, we got to go back and do it. I'm very happy to have a friend who's willing to do that with me. Shout out to my buddy Dave. And we would just, every time, like, no, we got to complete this. So after weeks and weeks and weeks, we decided finally 100% of this game. This game gets incredibly challenging at the end. The last stage in this, Champion's Road, is like legendary, so difficult. Especially when you have multiple people. I think it shows like between all 4 people. Like I've had I've had many people come over and play this game with me. I think cumulatively between all of us throughout the years of playing this, we've died like 2,000 times, it shows. And then, to fully complete this game, you have to go through some hoops. You have to complete every level with every character. So then I had 3 of my buddies come over and we replayed every stage quickly. And then, there's tons of other little nuances to fully do everything. But I decidedly completed this 100%ed Mario 3D World, and it was wonderful. I fully suggest that if you've been waiting for this game or you weren't sure what this is or you kind of skipped it in lieu of Mario Odyssey or the 3D collection, this is a great game to play alone or with a friend. There's plenty to do. My opinion on this game has fully changed. And it comes with a separate game right here, Bowser's Fury. What is that? That's kind of its own mini 3D Mario game in the vein of Mario 64 or Odyssey, where it is mostly single player. You can have a second player be Bowser Jr. and kind of follow you around and hit enemies, but it's mostly a single player adventure where you just kind of, in a Mario Sunshine type of way, bounce around all these islands in a gigantic lake while fighting this giant Giga Bowser, this Godzilla-sized Bowser, and you collect 100 cat shines, kind of like shine sprites, to fully complete it. And there's a lot to do to it. It's challenging at times. It's very exploratory at times. So overall, for the whole $60 package, you get a great remake, basically a remake of Mario 3D World, which is a fully featured game on its own, plus a shorter, probably 5 to 6 hours to beat Bowser's Fury, 10 to 12 to fully complete it, adventure right in this package. This was my most played platformer this year. There's no doubt about it. I really love this game. I'm excited for whatever the next 3D Mario game is going to be, but this definitely curbed my appetite for quite a while. That is Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury. That is a mouthful. of a title. And of course, with that being said, the game that I mentioned that I wanted the most in my thoughts, hopes, and dreams for 2022 came out, and that is the game that you've been looking at this whole time. That is this gem right here, Bayonetta 3. I did an unboxing video of the collector's edition. Please go check that out. Man, this game announced in 2017 finally came out right around Halloween of 2022. What a wait. I bought my Switch the day after this game was announced. I remember this was announced at the Game Awards in 2017, and I bought my Switch the next day. I was going to get a Switch regardless, but that really pushed me over the edge to want a Switch. I've said this many times. Bayonetta is one of my favorite series. I think Bayonetta 2 is like in my top 3 games of all time. I think it's the best in its genre. So I was very excited for this. And the wait was grueling. Platinum Games, the developers of this, released so many titles throughout the year. They released Astral Chain. They were working on Scalebound, which was canceled. They released The Terrible Babylon's Fall. They re-released Bayonetta 1 and 2 on Switch. They did a wonderful 101 remake on the HD consoles. And it was so much. I thought they had forgotten about Bayonetta until it was finally shown off in a trailer late last year. And my God, was I excited for this. I didn't want to know too much about the game because I knew I was going to 100% it. And so I watched the initial gameplay trailers, but that was it. And I took a day off. I wanted a 3-day weekend to play this game for Bayonetta 3. And what did I get? Did it live up to my expectations? Mostly yes. This is a contentious title. I mean, this series is contentious because it had become a Nintendo exclusive to begin with. People wanted it, the 2 on PS4 and Xbox One. They wanted this on PS5 and Xbox Series X. It is a Nintendo locked series. Nintendo is basically almost as Bayonetta is almost as owned by Nintendo as Mario is. Even though 1 can be re-released on many different platforms, 2 and 3 were funded by Nintendo and have some Nintendo content in them. So if they were ever re-released, they'd have to be heavily modified. But I don't think that's ever going to happen. Bayonetta is a Nintendo girl now, much like Samus. But that never bothered me. Bayonetta 2, like I said, was so wonderful in the Wii U. I don't think it was held back at all by that console. But Bayonetta 3, let's talk about this game for a minute. Maybe I'll do a full review on this some other time, but I do want to mention this because I'll tell you right now, this is in my runnings for Game of the Year. Before I fully announce what my Game of the Year was, this is one I heavily considered. Bayonetta 3, right off the bat, is not the best looking Bayonetta game. Even comparing it to Bayonetta 2, which was a Wii U only released on the Switch, I think that the color palette and the art style was a bit better and sharper on Bayonetta 2. I think this game has kind of a haze over it the entire time. Now, not that it's ugly at all. I still think this is a good Switch game, but I think it is good-looking Switch game, but I still think it is pushing the Switch to its limit. And I don't know whether that was an artistic choice or it's a hardware limitation, but this game does not, and I recently replayed Bayonetta 1 and 2 right after this, the game does not hold up artistically quite as well as Bayonetta 1 and 2. However, I think a huge part of that is obvious, is the big gameplay implement into this game, and that is the summoning of infernal demons. Yes, if you do not know, Bayonetta 1 and 2 have a feature where your attacks end with you summoning a demon quickly through a portal, whether it be their fist or their foot or their head, whatever. They come out of a portal, they attack the enemy, and they go back real quick. In this game, you summon and control the demon full shebang. Full body demon pops out of a portal. Instead of controlling Bayonetta, you control the demon to fight the enemies. And they are huge and massive, and there's quite a few of them. Bayonetta herself dances around and is vulnerable during this state. So the stages needed to facilitate the size of these characters. So there's a lot of wide open spaces in Bayonetta 3. And I think that is why the game kind of was graphically somewhat limited. And this mechanic was very cool. Unfortunately, it is a give and take. I think it is a great idea and really fun to control these demons at a certain time, but I think it was somewhat at the cost of the up close and personal combat with Bayonetta herself. Now, while Bayonetta has a fantastic arsenal of weapons, probably the most creative arsenal of weapons in any third-person action game ever, a lot of the boss fights and larger enemy fights are really designed for you to fight with the infernal demons. Some enemies are so big and so screen-filling that you wouldn't be able to see Bayonetta without those infernal demons. Like the demons are almost mandatory at times. And I think like, man, it's really cool to play as the demons, but sometimes I just want to fight as Bayonetta, and you feel like it's not really designed to do that. So there's a plus and a minus. So it ends up kind of being even, like, yes, it's cool. Is it better than the old ones? No. However, I must say the collection of weapons is fantastic. Unlike in Bayonetta 2, 1 and 2, you cannot equip different weapons to the hands and feet. Basically, you'd have a pair of weapons in your hands or a two-handed weapon and a different set of weapons on your feet, and you can kind of customize them. You can't do that in this. In this, essentially, each weapon covers your hands and feet, which sounds like a less in customization or options, but it's really not, because instead of each weapon being separate, like it feels like the move list of each one of these weapons is larger. Each one of these weapons has a full set intended for both your hands and feet, and that's kind of cool. As well as your firearm gun, the shooting, like you in Bayonetta 1 and 2, you'd always fire the basic handgun as your long distance weapon. Each one of these weapons has its own custom long-range weapon. So even though they subtracted the customization of hands and feet, you now have a different firearm and more moves per weapon than you did priorly. And you also move differently. In Bayonetta, whenever you sprint or move quickly, you turn into a panther or a bird. In this, every weapon has its own custom transformation. So while they took away customization in some areas, they added it in others. So yet again, it ends up being kind of even. However, one thing I will give this game is its amazing diversity of weapons. Not all of them are mandatory. You get many of them just through playing the story. They are creative. They are fun. They added the ability to you start with some less moves, but you can kind of customize. You buy moves with experience points as the game goes on, which is very cool. I think it ended up being a little bit more fleshed out. I kind of wish they were all available at the beginning, but at the end of the game, when I realized how many moves you had, it was a good way to kind of slowly break you into the weapons as the game goes on. The one thing I don't like about this game, though, is the enemy design. There's tons of enemies. There's plenty of variety of enemies, which is always good, classes of enemies. But their actual design, they're all like these white and green monstrosities, while Bayonetta 1 focused on angels, which were very golden and kind of detailed, and Bayonetta 2 had demons, which were very black and purple and crystalline and mechanical. The new enemies, the homunculi, are kind of bland looking. They all have the same color scheme, and they're very busy. It can kind of be hard to know what you're looking at, and they all kind of follow that pattern. And the old enemies from Bayonetta 1 and 2 do show up in this on occasion, and you kind of see how cool their old designs were as opposed to the new designs. So while there were definitely more enemy types than I was expecting, their actual visual variety, their actual design was kind of low. So yet again, a plus and a minus equals out. There are story problems with this game in some people's eyes. Well, number one, there's a second playable character, Viola, which I was very opposed at the very beginning. I only want to play as Bayonetta. I don't want this new character. She ends up being the Nero of the game, kind of like Dante's younger, not replacement, but more like partner that you also play as at times. She's fine. I thought she was going to be the super cool new kid. She's kind of like the butt monkey, Joe character, because she is younger. And it took me a while to kind of adapt to her gameplay. She plays totally different than Bayonetta. It's more about blocking than witch time. But then I realized that many of her movements were akin to Raiden in Metal Gear Revengeance, and I love that game. And once I kind of got that into my head, I enjoyed her combat more. However, she's not as fun to play as Bayonetta, but they knew that, so her gameplay segments are much shorter and quicker and less frequent than Bayonetta's. So it was a nice change of pace, and she has her own upgrade tree, not nearly as large as Bayonetta's herself, but that was cool. Jean's playable parts, where you play as these 2D spy parts, were boring as hell. That's one thing I just don't like about this game. Some people kind of probably like it. It's very shadow complexy, but I was always kind of dreading playing through them, even though they're blissfully short. I love Jean. I think she got shafted in this game. The story complaints, you people are out of your minds. Who plays Bayonetta for the story? This is my favorite franchise, one of my favorite franchises of all time. I play it for its irreverence, for the fact that there isn't too much focus of a story. There is one, but it's more about a loving send-up to other video games. Bayonetta constantly references Devil May Cry, Bayonetta, Sonic, Nintendo. There's Nintendo-based weaponry. So anyone who's deep into the lore of this game, you're out of your mind. If you're mad about that, I get it. It's a little out of character, but who cares? This series is out of its mind. It can do whatever it wants. As long as it plays well and looks cool, I think that it is great. Do I think it is better than its predecessors, though, Bayonetta 1 and 2? Well, that was what I did right after this game. I liked it, but I didn't come out with the high. I loved it even. I didn't come off with the high that I did with prior games, so I decided to replay Bayonetta 2 on the Switch. The first time me going through it on the Switch, I only did it 100% of the game on the Wii U, and I went through the HD version of Bayonetta 1 right after that. So I kind of did 3, 2, 1. And yeah, I must say, I think this is one of the best games that came out this year. Maybe it's my game of the year. You'll find out. But after immediately replaying Bayonetta 1 and 2 to kind of refresh myself on it, I don't think it surpassed or equaled Bayonetta 2. I'm not even sure if it surpassed or equaled Bayonetta 1. I think it may be the weakest in the franchise, the trilogy, right now. I need some more time to kind of settle this in my mind. I 100%ed this game. I've 100%ed all three. But right now it goes like 2-1-3, but it's 3 is really close up on 1. There's some like rough parts in 1. However, there are some fantastic things about 1 that I just love, and more in terms of setting, bosses, and enemies than anything else. But I must say, don't let that harken you. This is the best action game, like third-person action game that came out this year, and one of the best that's come out in the last 10 years, straight up. I think this game is very comparable to Devil May Cry 5. Yeah, it doesn't look as good, but the amount of actual fun you can have and the depth of the combat, I think that V from Devil May Cry 5 and Viola are very comparable, as in they're cool at first, but you kind of just want to play as Dante, or in that case, Nero as well. So I think it is at least as good as Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition. I will say that. So those are two of the very best third-person action games that have come out in the last decade. I think Bayonetta 3 is right up there. And I've rambled on about this, but I needed to. It's Bayonetta 3. You guys have heard me talk about this so much. If you're an action game fan, if you have a Switch, if you like the series, if you like good games, Bayonetta 3 right up your alley. Is it the best in the franchise? No. But that's like saying you're the weakest, you're the worst in S class, in the S rank, right? You're still an S class game. That's what Bayonetta 3 was. Yeah, so that leads me to the last big game that I 100% completed in 2022. It was a busy year, a lot of big games. And that is this game right here, Pokemon Scarlet. As you guys know, I'm a Pokemon fan. Last year, I decided to go through Pokemon Omega Ruby and Heart Gold. Love them to death. Probably my two favorite in the franchise. And then I did Pokemon Brilliant Diamond, which was okay. I beat the game, but it was a little bland, so I didn't end up like doing any extra stuff for it. But this game right here, this is one of the most contentious games of the year, Pokemon Scarlet. You'll see tons of YouTubers and outlets talking about this game because of fidelity reasons, graphical reasons. Let me tell you right now, is this the prettiest game in the world? No. But how many hours did I put into this game? 75. Yeah, I put 75 hours into this game. My main goal was to complete the Pokedex. There's 400 Pokemon in this game, and I wanted them all. For the first time in a long time, I'm like, let me get all the Pokemon. 400 is a doable number, and I'm not playing anything at the moment. And so I got Scarlet, my buddy got Violet. In a couple weeks, completed the Dex, beat the whole story, beat all the side missions. In those 75 hours, how many glitches or problems did I have in this game? One. I had one crash within 75 hours of gameplay. I don't know if I can say that about any of the other games on this list. Games today, even old games, crash or you have glitches all the time. Now, my experience, this is very anecdotal, and I've seen some hysterical glitches, compilations in other videos. And I was kind of looking for them because I thought they were more funny than anything. I'm like, look, this is Pokemon. I don't take it super seriously, even though I enjoy the games. I understand that's an open world Switch game. So I'm like, whatever. I'm kind of looking forward to these bugs and glitches because they looked funny. I really didn't encounter any, guys. Yeah, the game runs poorly, but it's Pokemon. I knew that going in. I did not expect this. And yes, it is the biggest IP in the world, so it probably has the ability to make an incredibly polished game that's like hundreds of hours long, even on the Switch. But I gotta say, like, this game hooked me. I put like 50 hours into this game in like 2 or 3 weeks. Like, it was so addicting. When they say open world, it is like the Elden Ring type of open world. Like, you really can go anywhere and do anything in any order. And I think I put 20 hours of just catching Pokemon into the game before I did the first badge. The game doesn't scale with you, which I kind of like. Like, I was level 50 when I did the first boss, and their Pokemon were level like 10, the first gym leader. I'm like, oh, this is like real open world. And the mount that you have, which is the Pokemon on the cover of your preferred version, like gets upgrades. You can go get them in any order, so you can at the very end of the game climb and glide and swim through this entirely huge open world map that's really beautiful and wonderful, and yeah, there's pop-in and the game doesn't run well, but the actual art style of the game was quite appealing, and the way the game is set up is really fun. The gameplay, the battle system is just as cool and as fun as Pokemon has ever been. The way they place Pokemon open on the open world, so it's not random battles, carry over from Sword and Shield and Let's Go, is really cool. But unlike Sword and Shield, like, there's just a freedom to this game that I really enjoyed. I think the new Pokemon were really cool. I think the way that you can do like online co-op was really fun. Yeah, is it like a buggy game? Not in my experience, and I can't speak for everybody, but the tirades I've heard about this game are insane. And I'm not like the diehard like Pokemon game that'll just like a fan that'll just play anything forever. Like I said, Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl were bland, so I dropped it right after beating the story. I didn't complete the Dex or anything, but I'm like, man, I'm really enjoying this, and all my friends are like, I have a bunch of people, all my friends like in our 20s and 30s are going around playing this game from all walks of life and enjoying the hell out of it. Everyone I know who's playing this has over 50 hours in the game, and I gotta say, if you're a Pokemon fan or you've been on the fence about this game, just pick it up. Like I said, every experience is going to be very circumstantial and anecdotal, but 75 hours, I had one crash in this game. I've heard it's been patched since then, so maybe that wouldn't have even happened, but someone who caught all the Pokemon and beat everything, man, this game hooked me like few other games hooked me this year or any year. Pokemon Violet and Scarlet, check it out. Don't listen to all the hate. If you think you're going to have a good time, if you're a Pokemon fan, trust me, you're going to really enjoy this. I was actually looking forward to some really funny glitches. I was almost disappointed I didn't hit any. And I'm not crapping on people who make those videos or had a bad time due to all that, because maybe that happened to them, but I put this game through the ropes, and I must say, for someone who did do that, really enjoyed it. Don't go in expecting this graphical masterpiece, but if you go in expecting a fun Pokemon game, you're absolutely going to get that. That's Pokemon Violet and Scarlet. And that brings us to our final two titles. One is going to be very, very quick. As you guys know from what I mentioned earlier and from everything, I am a huge, huge, huge Final Fantasy fan, Final Fantasy VII fan. Particularly, you guys, y'all know that I love this game right here. That is Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core. Yes, this year on the Switch, PlayStation 4 and 5, and Xbox, we got the Final Fantasy Crisis Core remake, remaster, whatever you want to call it, Reunion. That's the title of the game, Reunion. By the way, before I go on, this is a fantastic cover. This is one of the best covers I've ever seen in the recent memory. It's not like some action-packed cover of Zack swinging his sword at it, whatever. No, it's just the three characters. If you know who they are, you know. And this like beautiful cover, fantastic. This just came out 2 weeks ago at the time of this recording, and I got this lovely steelbook with it that some real retailers were selling. These are actually kind of hard to find right now. This is like the classic promo art from for Zack from the original release of Crisis Core, but I'm glad I got this. I'm playing the I got the PS4 disc, and I'm playing the PS5 version. When you pop it in, it's a free upgrade, and I like having two versions of the game. I have not had the time to fully jump into this. This came out, like I said, only about 2 weeks ago at the time of this recording. I played the first opening hours, and it's fantastic. There are some quick things I can talk about, like there are some smoothing out of some rough edges. Crisis Core itself on the PSP does hold up. I love that game so much. People who aren't into the digital mind wave, like the random elements of the game, you just got to, if you like just roll with it, if you get into that kayfabe, it's a really good and exciting time. I loved it at the time. And but this game adds the ability to kind of stock up digital mind wave attacks. Like you don't do them immediately. For people who played the game, you know what I'm talking about. You kind of store them up and unleash them when you want. It looks fantastic. It was a game that was released on everything, including the Switch. So there are some limitations. And it is more of a remaster in many ways. Like the skeleton of the original game is there, and they just kind of put pretty graphics on top of it. But it looks really good. Its art style now more reflects the Final Fantasy VII Remake. So it's a little bit less anime and a little bit more realistic, give or take. Like, I love the old look. The new look is good. I'd say it's as good in many ways. I do miss like the old like bright colors, but this is a very appealing look to kind of match up more with the world of FF7, the remake, I should say. So like I said, I only have a few hours, and I will go into this. I'm not in the mood to do this right now because I will platinum this game. I 100% did it on PSP, and there's work to be done. If you don't know, the story of this game is fairly short. I'd say, off the top of my head, I think you could probably beat the story in 20 hours. But there are 300 optional missions, ranging from incredibly fun to incredibly challenging. Yes, 300 missions. If you want to fully get the breadth of this game, you got to do all those, and that's going to take me some time. I had just done Intermission, the remake DLC not too long ago, and I know that when I jump into this, I'm going to really jump into this. So I'm taking a little bit of a break before I fully get back into this. However, I do have one complaint, and the internet is right about some things. Though I don't think Pokemon Scarlet and Violet's hate on the internet was warranted, there is one sticking point for this game that I think many people are talking about, and I think is 100% warranted, and that is the American English voice acting. Yes. The original Crisis Core had full voice acting from the crew of voice actors that were the official voice actors at the time, 12 years ago, that did Advent Children and the spin-off media, as it were, and actually it was quite good. Crisis Core, of course, has that lovable JRPG cheese, overwritten, over-dramatic, melodramatic. I loved it, but particularly Zack's old voice actor, whose name I believe was Rick Gomez, was fantastic. Zack is my favorite Final Fantasy character, period. And I think his performance was nuanced and fantastic, where he was kind of endearing, cool, and yet dorky. Loved that voice so much. Originally hinted at in the remake, there is a new voice actor for Zack. And I honestly think he spoils the experience for old-time fans. Even if you're a new fan, you never played the original, I think and I usually don't nitpick things about like this, but it's very noticeable. His voice acting is terrible, the new voice actor. It's very nasally and very insincere. And I think I can get over the sound of the voice if it wasn't so insincere sounding, because Zack is a very sincere character. All the other voice actors have been changed as well. And they do a very good job. They were sampled, obviously, in Remake. Like, Sephiroth's voice actor is good. It's probably not as menacing as George Newbern, the voice actor of the old Superman cartoons, who voiced Sephiroth in years prior is. He's probably not quite as good as that, but he's close enough that I still enjoy it. Cloud's voice is fantastic. Tifa, I love all the new voice actors. I think they're very similar and very good to their, very comparable to their old counterparts. But Zack kind of ruins it. I'm not going to lie. My favorite character, I don't nitpick this a lot. So I actually switched to playing the game in Japanese after a few hours, and it's far more bearable. So I want to know, what do you guys think about this? Do you like Zack's new VA? Do you hate it like the internet says? Do you not care? Did you switch it to Japanese? Do you not play JRPGs in English if you have the option? These are all opinions that I've heard. But one thing I got to say, this is a wonderful remake. Don't let the bad voice acting kind of ruin it for you. Switch it to Japanese if you can't say, you can switch it anytime. Don't let it affect your decision to buy this game. It's only $50 US. Wonderful, wonderful remake of one of my favorite games of all time. Not one of my favorite PSP games, not one of my favorite JRPGs or action RPGs. It is one of my favorite games of all time, Crisis Core. Got a new shiny coat of paint in this miracle remake that I will finish later in this 2023 Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core Reunion. Check it out. Love it. I'll probably have a whole video about that later. The final game of 2023 that I'm playing right now, or 2022 going into 2023, a game that I have had sitting on my shelf for years and years and have experienced second-hand through one of my best friends, is this title right here, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. Yes, so it's a quick rundown. 2022 was a big year for Xeno fans, the Xeno series fans, the Nintendo exclusive big open world JRPGs. Xenoblade Chronicles 3, which released late in the year, August it came out, late July, early August. And a lot of people think it was snubbed for Game of the Year because of its intimidating size. These games are long games. These are Persona length at least, but bigger. These are true open world JRPGs, and you have to kind of be into JRPGs, which is really an underdog genre at this point, to want to get into these 100-hour games with very complex but very well written and voice acted stories, very high concept stories. And I'm like, you know what? I've had these games sitting on my shelf for a while. My best friend growing up has been into the series since Xenogears, so I'm aware of it. I've always experienced it secondhand. I know the lore and the backdrop, but I've never actually gone through, even with the Wii version, played through these games myself. But I've recognized their quality, but I've never had the time. And you got to be in the mood to play games like these, or any game, but especially long games, because you want to finish them, to do the Xeno Saga games. So I'm like, you know what? There's nothing coming out in the upcoming month or so. And I'm not in the mood to play anything else at the moment. Xenoblade is kind of at a high with Xenoblade 3. And like last year, I like doing series playthroughs of big franchises I've never played. Like I did Souls last year. This year, it's the Xeno. Going into 2023, it'll probably take me well into 2023. I'm going to do, at least I'm hoping to do, the Xenoblade Chronicles games. That's 1, 2 with the expansion, Torna, and 3. I'll probably save X. We'll see what mood for later. We'll see what type of mood or how long this all takes. But I want to do the complete Xenoblade 1, 2, and 3. And I'm starting with the definitive edition of 1. And at the time of this recording, I'm about 20 hours into this game, 25 hours perhaps, and I adore it. I've heard so much about these games. I've seen my friend play them, but it's always different when you get your hands on the controller yourself, right? When you actually, instead of watching it, you have your hand right there on the game, controlling it and going through it yourself. I adore this game. This release is an HD version that was released 2 years ago during the pandemic of the Wii release in the 2010/2012 US release of Xenoblade Chronicles. It is fantastic. I'm really seeing what people when they talk about the quality of this game. I'm seeing it. It is wonderful. This game has everything that I wish all JRPGs or all RPGs, not just Eastern, but Western RPGs would have. You don't create the character, you play as this young man here, Shulk. I prefer games like that. I always think the narrative is better when it doesn't have to kind of compensate and adapt for your creative character. The world is truly massive. I don't know how they did this back on the Wii, but when they say open world, like much like with Pokemon Scarlet, they mean it. You can go and do anything in this game almost at any time, and there's fast travel to points that you've already been. The areas are diverse and beautiful with enemies ranging from your level. Like if you're level 2, you know, in the story, there'll be level 2 monsters around, let's say, but then there'll be a giant level 98 monster roaming around, like letting you know, hey, you can try to do this now if you really want, or you can come back later and fight it. The vistas are creative and wonderful. The combat is very fun. It is very, I wouldn't say it's a real time, but not in the way of Kingdom Hearts. You're not exactly jumping around. It's similar in the sense that you're selecting from a menu your big skills. You automatically attack, very similar to something like Dragon Age if you're familiar, but it's very in depth, like the way you kind of coordinate with your party and you have to kind of organize your attacks. It's a lot, but they slowly roll it out to you over the course of the game where they keep adding new features. Like I'm 25 hours in and they'll just keep adding little nuances, but not in an annoying way where you feel like you have to do it now, more in a way of, oh, this is cool. This is going to keep it fresh. And the story is wonderful, very high concept, too long to go into at the moment, but original. Something I love about JRPGs is usually they have a very original and creative backdrops and beginnings, but maybe the execution of the story is predictable or trite. Not in this case. I'm really enjoying this game so far. I'm nowhere near done at 25 hours, but I am really enjoying what I really think is probably Nintendo's premier RPG franchise. Not counting Pokemon, which is a JRPG, but like there's also like Fire Emblem. I'm not the biggest Fire Emblem fan. I've bounced off those games. They are cool, but there's something about it, and they're very different. They're tactical RPGs, but Xenoblade hooked me in a way that series never really has, in just terms of lore and design. And this is quickly kind of becoming a premier franchise. Whether people want to say it or not, Xeno is as owned. It is a second-party company, Monolith Soft, as Kirby is to Nintendo. Shulk was in Smash Brothers, and then from Xenoblade 2, Pyra and Mithra now are. Like, it is getting more representation. And Xenoblade 3 was a big release, and now I see why. These games have features that I wish new Final Fantasies would have. Like I said, that open world, the very good voice acting, very, very, very good voice acting, the creativity, really like, you know, I don't think that open world games are better than linear games. Like I think it just depends on what you're going for. But this game has the kind of focus and depth and precision that you would like in a linear game, set in an open world, much like Elden Ring. Essentially, Elden Ring is more action-oriented setup for this game. So if you're like into Elden Ring, this game shares many similarities. You can really go and do anything, and the map opens up as you play. And this company is obviously doing something right, because they are also help develop Breath of the Wild, and are helping with development of Breath of the Wild 2 Tears of the Kingdom. So Monolith Soft, now I see 25 hours enough for me to say they have a mark of quality that is very rare. And this is going to be my 2023 series playthrough. Like I said, 1, 2, and 3. I'm loving this game. I'm going to finish 2022 playing Xenoblade. I think that's appropriate. A franchise that, much like Souls, I've always loved from afar or admired from afar, but now I can say I'm a Xenoblade player and truly understand and love this franchise. It is not overhyped. And I cannot wait to see where this journey leads me. And that, my friends, is the end of this very, very long video. Yes, that was what I played in 2022. What did you guys think? Did you, have you played any of these games? Did you end up liking any of these games? Do you have any recommendations for things that I may have missed? Like, I wanted to play Kirby, the new Kirby game, I forget what it's called. The new 3D Kirby game that came out this year. There's always like 5 Kirby games coming out, and I mix their titles up. But the new 3D Kirby game I wanted to play. I wanted to play Horizon, but that came out the same time. Horizon 2, that came out the same time as Elden Ring and King of Fighters. So that was getting thrown on the back burner. There's so many games that I missed that hopefully I can play in the future. And it was a hell of a fun year. I must say, I still feel like this was the first year of the new consoles. Like 2021 was kind of a mulligan. There's still not a ton of exclusives for PS5 and Xbox Series X. They're all like multi-platform. Like the only ones I could think off of my top of my head for like PlayStation 5 was like Ratchet and Clank, Returnal, and Demon's Souls. And for Xbox Series X, it's like just Forza. This is a year that I was very disappointed with Halo. Halo Infinite is not what I expected or wanted it to be. Last year I was talking about how excited I was for the launch of that game. I didn't even end up really playing it that much, or I'm very disappointed with the lack of co-op in that game, with local co-op. So I'm a little sad with Halo, but who knows? Maybe they'll turn it around like they did with Master Chief Collection. This is the year that, like I said, the Switch went strong. This was a good year for fighting games. This was a good year for RPGs. I really enjoyed this. I played some minor things here and there. I played like the Street Fighter 6 beta, which was unbelievably good. This was the final year of this game right here, Street Fighter 5, like in earnest. played some of that, but that Street Fighter 6 beta has made Street Fighter 6 one of the most anticipated games for 2023. I'll talk about that in another video. And yeah, it was a good year for gaming, but I mostly played like in and out smaller games or re-releases this year, but some fantastic new titles as well. It was the Souls year for me, in essence. So let me know, what did you guys think of what I played this year? Your thoughts on my thoughts on these games. And that ends up, what ends up being my game of the year? Well, I'll divide this there's two awards. What is the best old game I played this year? Game that did not come out in 2022, that I completed in 2022, and that would go to Sekiro right here. All the Souls games are S-class games, but I must say the one that kind of like I could not stop thinking about was probably the most different of them. They're all great. It was between Demon Souls because of its beauty and it's like kind of being the first and most kind of like rough around the edges in some ways game from software game, and Sekiro, the first and the last before Elden Ring. But Sekiro was just so punishing and demanding. Like every Souls game kind of gets easier as you get like Demon Souls. So when I beat that. So Dark Souls 1 wasn't that hard because it kind of plays the same with 2 and 3. I kind of, even to an extent, Elden Ring, like the skill carried over. So what's the hardest? It's really hard to say. It's like probably the first one you play because they all kind of are similar. Sekiro is different enough within the same framework of the Souls games to really challenge me and have an amazing setting and vertical combat that was later brought into Elden Ring. Some of the coolest bosses in the series. So I got to give it to Sekiro. It's the best old game that didn't come out in 2022 that I completed in 2022. I got the platinum in this. Like I said, one of my proudest platinums. So yes, Sekiro is my backlog game of the year. What is my brand new game of the year? And it really, really was tough for me to kind of decide between these. It's going to come down between Bayonetta 3 and Elden Ring. Now, Elden Ring has won every Game of the Year award, and usually that's a sign of just like good marketing. You know what I'm saying? Like, or you know, odd voting. Like, I remember at the Game Awards, it was like It Takes Two won Game of the Year last year. I'm like, get out of here, stop that. And most people thought like God of War would. God of War is another game that I will play in 2023. Absolutely. Finish. I've begun it. I will finish it in 2023, but I barely started it because it was right after Bayonetta 3 and I was busy. But yeah, Elden Ring definitely deserves all the praise it gets. And Bayonetta 3 won Best Action Game at the Game Awards and in many publications, and it definitely deserves it. People online, stop complaining about the story stuff. It doesn't matter. I don't know. This was tough, and I think like for a while I deliberated upon this. Like, what did I really enjoy more? Both of these games hooked me in ways that I wasn't expecting. However, I must say that Bayonetta 3 was not as good as its predecessor Bayonetta 2, but it still ended up being the best combat system I enjoyed this year. So yeah, I'll go with that. Bayonetta 3 had the best combat system I played this year. However, I think Elden Ring is going to be I know it's a safe choice, ended up being my game of the year because this is Elden Ring. Everyone says, oh, it's open, it's big, and it's difficult. That's why it's the best. There's also like the nuance of a more linear, smaller game here. This game has like silent humors, I like to say, environmental jokes that you can only kind of get when you're playing the game. So like there's a humor to it, and there's a design and a beauty to it. I think incorporated some of the best features from the franchise, the verticality of Sekiro, while kind of having the ability to jump, while kind of having the depth of like the Dark Souls games. And just like it was really fun to just go in a direction and enjoy yourself in this game. You know what I'm saying? Like you can just like pick a direction, go and have fun. So yeah, my pick for game of the year is going to go to Elden Ring. I think it's a fantastic cap off to the Soul series. I'm glad they're taking a break and doing Armored Core. I'm very excited for that. And I think a close follow-up behind that, my second favorite game of the year is going to go to Bayonetta. So yeah, game of the year, guys, Elden Ring. It is as good as people say. Don't fret. Like I loved it. And the runner-up behind that would be Bayonetta 3. And I'd say my third favorite game of the year may have been Pokemon. Like 1, 2, 3. What an eclectic group. Don't say that I don't play a variety of games, because each one of these three couldn't be more different than the last. I love Elden Ring in first, Bayonetta 2 in second, and probably Pokemon in third. If I had finished Xenoblade, I would say that was my... that would probably be like 2 or 3, because I'm really, really loving this. But it's not over yet. I can't rank this. This game is fantastic. But as in full releases in 2022, my favorite games this year, like a lot of these games were released prior. I'm not to say that these games are better than the older games that I'm playing, but brand new games, 2022. Yeah, these three kind of taking the cake. Love them so much. And that does it, guys. That brings an end to this very, very long video. What did you guys think? I want to know, what was your game of the year? What were some things that I missed? Did you not play new games this year? Did you only play old games or vice versa? What are your thoughts on them? And what do you want to see for 2023? I'll be doing a video on my hopes for 2023 very, very soon. But Xenoblade keeps hooking me and I keep getting losing track of time. So yeah, guys, that was my 2022, pretty much summed up in a nutshell. So without rambling on too much longer, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for joining me in 2022. This channel has never been about accruing numbers, but I'm surprisingly have more subscribers and lovely comments than I ever thought I would. I've loved reading them. I love seeing the communication, because you know what? Gamers, even with the advent of the internet, there's so many subcultures and islands of gaming. It's very difficult to connect with gamers of a similar kind of open-mindedness. Some people are very in their little bubble and don't want to leave it. But as a collector and a lover of just the industry in general, like I love PC, console, RPG, action game, what have you, it's very hard to connect with other open-minded gamers. Not to sound pretentious, but that's what I feel like a lot of you, my audience, is. You're willing to try a variety of new, old, left, right games, and that's what I've really seen grown over this year, and I've really appreciated the feedback. This is a cheap little channel where I just love talking about games, and I've really loved seeing what you guys have brought to the table and have opened my eyes to. So thank you for that. Thank you for your support. Thank you for watching. My name is Mike. This has been Chip Damage, and have a very happy new year.